Are you tired of being sheep? Well, so is he. Get a friend, get informed, and get involved. It's We're Not Cattle Radio.
When the sun's gonna rise in a mile, you'll be feeling fine. In a mile, you will see. After me, you'll be out of the dark. Yeah, you'll get your shot. Yeah, the sun's gonna rise in a mile. In a mile, you'll be feeling fine. In a mile, you will see.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to We Are Not Cattle Radio. I am your host, Jake Counts. With me as a guest for about the first half hour, Daryl Young. Daryl, thanks for coming on the podcast, man. You there? I think we're having trouble.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Oh, there we are. There we go, man. Sorry, it's just sometimes I get a little delay here. But, hey, thanks for joining us, man. As you guys probably know, the podcast is going to be centered today. I thought it was actually going to be centered around this war, but we got so many things going on. And at the end of the podcast, in about the last 35 minutes, I'm going to air the interview I did yesterday with Adam Kokesh. So Daryl actually works over there with Adam. So, Daryl, what's the status update, man? Are you guys getting bombarded or what? I know you only got a half hour with me, so that means that you got a lot of extra work to do, huh?
Yeah, man, it's been real busy. You know, ever since his release, it's been nonstop interviews with him and still continuing our work and our podcast and our production. It's been nonstop.
That's awesome, man. Well, you guys keep fighting the good fight. And it's like I told him, man, you guys keep fighting because we're pushing back too, and everybody needs to push back. And a couple of the, I've got a couple of audio clips here, and one of the first one I wanted to play is a little bit down the list, so I'm gonna have to wait. It's a pretty long clip. It's like 13 minutes. But let's start out with some news, and we'll start out and we'll kind of ease into this stuff because. As you guys might have remembered, a couple of podcasts ago, I did a podcast on the police state. And yet again, the police state has reared its loving head down in the state of Florida. And this comes from RT, from Russia Today, care of Reuters. And this is great. And Daryl, I'll have you comment on this because this will absolutely make you go bonkers too. School scans students' irises without permission. And it goes on to say, parents of Polk County, Florida, are outraged about learning how the area schools have used the iris scans as part of a new security program without obtaining proper permission. Remember, these are government slave facilities, so they don't really have to train, they don't have to get your permission to go ahead and teach your kid how to be a slave. So students at these three facilities, an elementary school, a grade school, and a high school, had their eyeball scanners early this month as part of a quote-unquote student safety plot program carried out by Stanley Convergent Security Solutions. And he goes on to say, it simply takes a picture of the iris, which is unique to every individual. Rob Davis, the school board's senior director of support services, wrote home to the parents in a letter dated May 23rd. With this program, we will be able to identify when and where a student gets on the bus, when they arrive at school location, when that bus what bus the student boards and disembarks on in the afternoon. This is an effort to further enhance the safety of our students. The iSwipe Nano is an ideal replacement for the card-based system since the kids don't have to be responsible for carrying an identification card. And the article goes on and on and on, and I won't bore you guys with the details. It's a little bit longer, but the parents are a little bit upset. So, Daryl, what are your thoughts on this, man? What do you think about your kids going to a school where they're just going to get retina scanned? And they always sell tyranny as something. Oh, it's just easy. Look at how easy this is. It's just so much easier. You're not going to have to worry about anything. We're just going to retina scan your kids. It's not in 1984 or anything like that. It's not in the Ministry of Truth. But we're going to use this technology because, it makes it easier for the kids, and then the parents can know where the kids are. What do you think, man?
What I don't understand is how is this really going to protect the children, and how is this going to benefit the people on them just keeping a track on how many kids are, I guess, attended that day in school by this scan? What's next? The RFID chip? Like, come on.
Oh, there's another article about, they tried that stuff over in Texas, and I've got another article right here that I can pull up. But yeah, you're exactly right, man. They're going to just start doing microchips. And then I've got more Big Brother stuff from Wired Magazine. But I want to continue with this article a little bit because I didn't get to, to let the parents have their say. And it says, parents at Daniel Jenkins Academy, the DePune Academy, and the Davenport School of the Arts received a letter from the school board on 24th informing them that the iSwipe Nano program and their child's principal should be notified if they don't want their son or daughter to participate. Now, this was on May 24th after they had already, sent a letter home on the 23rd. But elsewhere in the letter, the board explained that the program would begin last Monday, the 20th. By that time, the letter was received on Friday. Iris scans had already been completed in 3 areas of the school without a single student opting out. Angela Clark wrote to the Examiner this week. Because Memorial Day landed on the 27th, parents were unable to receive confirmation from the school until Tuesday, nearly 1 week after the scans began. Oh, are you trying to tell me that government pulled some kind of boondoggle to implement something and then try to backhand way in there and say, well, we told you that we were doing this? Does this sound familiar to anybody, like what the FBI Deputy Director of Counterterrorism said on CNN? Let me see if I can find that. And then, Daryl, I want you to elaborate on this because you're exactly right. Here is what the Deputy Director of Anti-Terrorism said about 2 weeks ago when they were trying to find one of the suspected terrorist bombers' girlfriends.
Okay, let's turn our attention now to the phone call between Catherine Russell and her husband, Tamerlan Tsarnaev. You said something very interesting on Aaron Burnett's show last night. You said that if Catherine Russell does not divulge the contents of this phone call, that the FBI had other methods finding out what was said. What did you mean by that?
Well, on the national security side of the house, in the federal government, we have assets. There's lots of assets at our disposal throughout the intelligence community, and also not just domestically but overseas. Oh. Those assets allow us to gain information and intelligence on things that we can't use ordinarily in a criminal investigation, but are used for major terrorism investigations or counterintelligence investigations.
And you're not talking about a voicemail, right? What are you talking about exactly?
I'm talking about all digital communications are
recorded.
There's a way to look at digital communications in the past. And I can't go into detail of how that's done or what's done, but I can tell you that no digital communication is secure. And so these communications will be found out. The conversation will be known. And it's just a question of whether or not Catherine Russell decides to own up to what was said prior to that information being known or after the fact. And if it'll be.
Hey, never mind that we're breaking a bunch of laws. Never mind that we're spying on everybody. Under the blanket of national security. What's going to be national security? So, Daryl, what do you think about this? I mean, now we have kids getting retina scanned. And you just heard the FBI Deputy Director of Counterterrorism say that, well, we got all these digital records. So basically it's like, oh, we're going to indoctrinate all your kids first and then let you know that we've already scanned their irises and everything and they're already in probably an NSA database. So enjoy. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for them to catch a terrorist for the first time.
No, that's the TSA's job, because if they look in your crack of your pants, then they're going to find Osama bin Laden or Al-Qaeda that we fund over in Syria. And that was one of the big audio clips I wanted to get to, is the Ben Swann thing that he did about, I think it was like almost 3 months ago, where he talked about how... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying this is definitely a waste of taxpayer money. Like, we could be spending this money elsewhere to something that could benefit the people. I don't know how this is going to stop the terrorists.
But Daryl, don't you want to protect the kids? Don't you want to protect the kids? I mean, forget putting an armed security guard at each school. Why don't we just have complete lockdown, and if you don't have a retina scan that's quote-unquote approved, you don't get to go to school?
That's how it works. You got to get vaccinations, or else your kid can't get registered, or so they say.
Yeah, this is absolutely getting ridiculous. And then this kind of piggybacks on top of another article that I found that was absolutely astonishing to me. And as if corporations don't stick it to us enough. Here is what Wired Magazine, when did this come out? This is a Wired Magazine, and it looks like that this was dated today. So it says, Big Brother is not a management technique is the title of the article. And it says, some employers are taking advantage of new technologies to keep a closer and closer eye on their employees. They need to just call them what they are, just paid wage slaves. You're just a wage slave. Enjoy it. And they're watching network traffic, reading emails, and recording computer screens. as likened to Big Brother. But even worse, it's not just the IT guys looking at the computer usage. Here's where it gets fun, Daryl. You'll love this. Tesco is hot water for putting electronic armbands on their employees to track everything from how fast they move to how long they spend in the bathroom. Invasive? That's nothing. Professional athletes are being wired up with heart rate monitors and GPS tracking devices to see how much effort they give off in games and practices. Employers have even looked into implanting their workers with RFID chips in order to see what they're up to. California went so far as to pass a law to protect workers from implanted tracking devices. While many people wonder what the ethics are behind such detailed tracking or technology, an important question is kind of invasive monitor is even efficient. After all, what can a manager really learn about an employee from their Facebook page? In the end, invasive monitoring solutions tend to fail for 3 reasons. Number 1, they give too much of the wrong information. Managers don't have time to sit through all the hours of screen recordings and data logs. They're too busy trying to understand what's really happening on the screen records, and most of the data gathered is only going to be useful if you're already building the case to fire an employee. Number 2, they don't provide information that helps the employees improve. Reading other people's personal emails won't get managers any idea of how to coach them and their team. Knowing that someone went to Facebook on the company computer doesn't mean anything if we're on break. If it looks like somebody was working slow, that might be because they're working on a tough project. If the job on the manager is to keep the people to do better, massive data gathering won't help. And number 3, employees get the message being sent. Invasive tracking is a great way to tell employees that you don't trust them and that you're not on their side, and that you're looking for a reason to push them. Good workers will take this message and they will take it and will take this message that they're in the wrong job, and bad workers will take it as they're accusing me to game the system. Instead of taking the role as Big Brother managers need to take note of being a good manager. Instead of managing the metrics and hammering outliers, they should take the role as a personal trainer who wants everybody to do their best. From some degree of observation is needed. No one should complain about their manager watching them or how long they work on a goal and of watching and how to understand how they work and challenge themselves from having. Only from this can managers actually help their employees improve. So it is a really big conundrum that you run into, because Daryl, as you know, I was in corporate America for a long time, and I started seeing stuff like this where you would have employees that were literally done with their day, and they were just looking to, kind of blow off some steam. They wanted to go look at, let's say, Drudge Report or something like that. But they were actually intimidated because they're like, well, what if I go to a site that's blocked, or what if I go to a site that they're going to go through and track all my cookies? So it really does it's kind of like taking the fear that most people have on the internet about posting things on Facebook and then applying that to their workforce, and it's just going to make them tentative workers. And it's just like what the man said. It's Daniel Ethenvon. All right, whatever, man. You got an incredibly tough name to pronounce. But Daniel's right on target here with this. It just it sets up for a bad working environment. How would you feel if Adam was able to screen and lock all your cookies and see what you were going to all the time and says, Daryl, I know you're working on that video for me for the last 4 days, but I saw here for 7 minutes that you were, messing around on Twitter, and I'm going to have to dock your pay.
Damn, people's already calling him a fucking narc and fed. Like, that will just confirm, like, he's watching over me. Like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Now, see, that's that was one of the rumors that I didn't get to dispel with him the other day. But I know you working through Adam, and I've spent some time with him, just in interviews and kind of chatting, and there is no way that was a Fed setup. Now, there was some issue going around whether that was that somebody tried to plant something on him, but I think that's a moot point at this point anyway. The event's already done, the transaction's already taken place, he's already served his time, now he's out. So let's move on to bigger and better things. Let's move on to stuff like going to war. Doesn't that sound like fun? Doesn't that sound like fun, going to war? That's what America needs. Hey, liquor stores, get ready, because your sales might go through the roof. You guys and your pizza delivery people might have some spikes here, because it looks like that the radical Muslims that we're funding, the radical Muslim insurgents that we're funding, are getting ready to go over to Syria. And then now Assad is not liking the fact that they're just bombing his country for no reason. So he got some missiles from Russia. So here is, I've actually got a clip here. This is a 10-minute clip. So Daryl, this will give you time to relax for a second and gather your thoughts. And it'll also give me a time to relax and gather my thoughts. And I might not play the whole 10-minute clip. But this is a clip from Rand Paul trying to understand that we were actually going to fund the Al-Qaeda allies. So here is the clip from C-SPAN. Enjoy, everyone.
Does any other member have an amendment to call up? Senator Paul.
Mr. Chairman, our nation is weary of war. We've been at war for over a decade in two main countries, Afghanistan and Iraq. I don't think we're eager to get into another war. I talk to our young men and women who have volunteered to fight in war. I think it's not a good idea to get involved in Syria. I think it's a very murky war with so many different factions. It's hard to know who are our friends, who aren't our friends, who you should arm, who you shouldn't arm. I don't think anybody can sit here in Washington and say, well, I'm confident these weapons are only going to good, liberty-loving, Jeffersonian, type of Democrats in Syria, and that bad people aren't going to get these weapons. So I'm very concerned about giving weapons. I think also, when you think about the amendment that I'm offering, the First Amendment, it clarifies that the 2001 use of authorization of force does not authorize intervention in Syria. This is stating another way what we are already stating in the bill, that this is not a use of authorization of force. But it goes to the heart of the debate we're going to have, that Senator Corker has talked about having, about the definition of the original use of authorization of force in Afghanistan that's come to mean anything. And I think it's important that we state explicitly what we think it means. There is a great irony here in the sense that if you wanted to believe in an expansive definition of the 2001 use of authorization of force, it says go after Al-Qaeda and associated forces. Well, Al-Qaeda and associated forces are opposing Assad. So if you want to believe in an expansive definition of the 2001 AUMF, you might believe that you could actually support Assad with arms, that the original use of authorization of force actually would justify giving arms to Assad. And I'm not proposing that. But I am proposing that you will be giving arms to the side that is fighting against Assad that has elements of Al-Qaeda. There is a great irony there. I am also saying that in your rush to get involved in Syria, that you may well be arming Islamic rebels who will be shooting Christians. There's about somewhere between 1 million and 2 million Christians in Syria. They have been largely protected by Assad. I'm once again not saying Assad's a good guy, but I'm saying that they've been a protected minority by Assad for decades because he's a minority and it's been practical for him. They haven't taken a large position in the war. They're in the middle of this, but they tend to live in areas and have been protected by the Assad regime. When push comes to shove, I think there'll be a great irony and tragedy and sadness if you've sent arms with U.S. taxpayer money to kill Christians. I think it could happen. I think it's impossible to know who our friends are. Look at how much trouble we have in Afghanistan. We have an ally that we've had for 10 years, and we don't know who to trust in the Afghan army. We've had probably nearly 100 deaths from Afghan soldiers. They lie.
Most of them on opium.
They come in and say they're our ally, and they take a pledge to support us, and we turn the other way and they shoot us. And Syria is a much messier situation, maybe 100 times messier than Afghanistan is. I know everybody here wants to do the right thing, but I think it's a rush to war. Now, people will say, oh, you're not putting troops on the ground. Well, we are going to have capacity building. There is no limitation in this bill on where those troops can do capacity building. I'm assuming it's going to be more in Jordan and other places. There's no limitation here that the troops, U.S. troops, can't be on the ground in Syria. So this resolution could be arming rebels, who even the Joint Chief of Staff have said it's unclear, and it's increasingly unclear who our friends are, and it's increasingly difficult to determine who our friends are. He says in the last 6 months, it's become harder to determine who our friends are. This is the Joint Chief of Staff, who I would think would be privy to a lot of information and whose opinion and weight should be listened to carefully. So I'm very concerned about arming the rebels. I'm concerned about getting more involved. I'm concerned about the slippery slope into war. War doesn't always start.
All right, I had to cut that off. All right, so I've got a bunch of guys that just popped onto the podcast. Daryl, are you there still?
Still here, brother.
All right, so you know what? This is what I got for Rand Paul.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Rand Paul, are you trying to tell me that we would fund the terrorists? That is just complete and utter.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
I mean, come on, man. We don't fund the Wait a minute. We funded the terrorists one, two, three. We funded them a couple times, but this one's different, Daryl. This one's different. This is completely different. We know but we don't know who the bad guys. Okay, we know who the aren't. No. So I got a couple of other guys on here, Daryl. I want to get your take on the whole Syria thing, and then I'm going to pull up my guys from Journalistic Revolution, and I've also got one of my buddies from Florida. I want to see if I can get his take on it too. So, what's your take on this regime, man? I mean, we're just gonna. Hey, how about this? Why don't we'll give guns to everybody in the Eastern world. We'll give guns to everybody all over Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. We'll give them all guns, but we're going to take the guns from the American people. Are they going to give them our guns? Is that what's going to happen?
Yeah, they're waiting for the rally so they can confiscate our guns to give it to their allies and friends.
so they can make billions of dollars killing Christians and spreading democracy. What a joke! All right, here you
only
go.
Only concerned about the Christians. I love that.
Say what now?
I said only concerned about the Christians. They're not concerned about killing Islamic babies with spy drones.
No. See, that's the thing, man. That's such the thing. But see, Rand Paul, and I know that everybody has their quips about Rand Paul, and I know that he plays a lot of baseball. He does. He plays a lot of softball in there with these guys. But the way that I see it, you got to play some politics. Otherwise, we're never going to get out of this, right-left paradigm because the masses just haven't figured it out yet. So the only way that you're going to get a true libertarian movement is get somebody like Rand Paul, who's kind of like libertarian light, but a little bit of a neocon in the same sense. And the fact that I understand what his stance is on drones, I get that. But I also think that that's a slippery slope, too. So here, I don't know who I have here. I'm going to pull this guy up. Hold on one second, Daryl. So it's pulling up. Who do I have here? Do I have Robert or Matthew from the Journalistic Revolution?
You have Robert, sir.
Oh, excellent. Hold on. Let me see if I can pull up my other guy here, too. All right, let me see if I can pull him up. Andrew, do we have you down in Florida? Andrew Johnson, tech guy, A1A tech guy. Do we have you? Oh, it doesn't look like he's got his microphone hooked up. Hook your microphone up, Andrew, if you want to be a part of the show. But Robert, what are your thoughts on this, man?
Well, I just kind of caught the tail end of that, and what I was hearing is Rand Paul's concerned about us getting involved in the Syrian war. Is that right?
Well, it's not so much getting involved. He's worrying about us, signing bills to help fund the radical jihadis who are elements of Al Qaeda and who have ties.
How the hell is that not getting involved?
Huh?
I said, how is that not getting involved?
No. He said he is trying to keep us from getting involved with these people because it's very clear when they made that declaration about how they were going to go about distributing arms and stuff in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they made it clear that they weren't going to fund any elements of Al Qaeda and that Al Qaeda and the Taliban were the enemy. But yet what he points out is that we're actually giving arms and funds and food to the al-Qaeda rebels over in Syria to try to topple Assad, who has not attacked anyone. And that's the whole catch, is that, guys, if you can get this through your head, you will open up to the entire paradigm of why government is just a monopoly of force. Syria has attacked no one. Has attacked nobody, has attacked their own people, has not attacked anybody. And these groups that are over there, and wait till I play this next clip, I actually should go to this right now because it really does encapsulate everything that we're talking about. But, I mean, that's what he's talking about. It's just, we're literally funding Al-Qaeda in this nation, and then we've got to give up our rights here in America and go through the TSA naked body scanners and get groped at the airport because of Al-Qaeda. I mean, it is absolutely retarded. And then you go and look at people like Mark Dice that goes out and does a man on the street and asks people, you know, what is Memorial Day about? And the guy goes, dude, I don't care. I just know I don't got to go to work, and I just kick it. I just kick it, bro. I just kick it. Like, dude, for real? For real?
Well, this is how
getting bankrupt. Your country is getting bankrupt. We're killing people, innocent people all over the world, stamping our flag that's got your freaking name and face on it, and you don't care. I just want to kick it. You disgrace me, you sheep. I'm sorry. Go ahead, guys. All right, Robert, go ahead. Take the floor.
Well, this is how I feel about other countries' civil wars and revolutions, okay? I think, and maybe, you know, you can call me an elitist scumbag if you want. I think that when...
That's even worse.
Have you seen our new video? You'll love it.
Yeah,
but anyway,
I'll let you promote that at the end. Those are really good.
Thanks. But this is how I see it. There has to be some sort of proving period. There has to be some length of time, because I am all in support of revolutions and movements towards freedom and liberty. So if, you know, we're going to support what they're trying to say we are supporting when we're supporting rebels, but of course we all know that it's crap. But I am for revolutions and movements towards liberty. But there has to be a proving period. Like American Revolution, we didn't immediately get backing from France. And it was like, oh yeah, here's our name. You know what I mean? We didn't immediately get the help. I'm not saying that the American Revolution actually ended in absolute liberty, but it ended us closer to it. And we had a proving period, a period where we had to hold our own against the crown. You know, and we're not seeing that. We're immediately jumping on these.
Dude, Halliburton's got to get their $2 billion off of their tarps. I mean, come on. I understand you got to have the proving period. We got to see if it's a real bona fide revolution, not like what happened over in Egypt where Google like fomented that revolution, and then we go over there and put them, you know, kick out a dictator who was like a soft dictator, and then put the Muslim Brotherhood in and go, here's your democracy. Later, guys. Oh, by the way, go chop a bunch of people's heads off. Take it easy.
It's the hilarious thing about that, and that's because I'm all trying to find humor in the worst situations. The funniest thing about that was when Bush said that they would support, and this was when Hamas came into power, I'm sorry, a different time, but they would support any democratic actions in the Middle East, and they democratically elected Hamas.
Wow. All right, so you know, I got your 2 cents, Daryl. What do you make of all this? What do you make of us funding the terrorists, and then the terrorists saying to us, hey, look, you guys need to stop this? And I've got an article that I'll read here in a minute where Assad's talking about, listen, you know, the West is going to get in trouble for funding these Al-Qaeda terrorists, and people are going to find out, and they're going to be in a lot of trouble. So what do you think, G?
Well, for starters, you know, we originally wanted to go into Syria, and, you know, China and Russia stepped in the way and said, hey, if you attack Syria, we're going to have issues with you. Then they decided they're going to go into Libya and Egypt. Then all of a sudden, you know, Israel attacked Syria because they're so-called killing their people with chemical weapons. But we're the ones funding the terrorists over and over again. It's like we're pointing the fingers at the wrong people when we need to look right at home and point out the real criminals, our politicians.
It's so sick, man. It is really sick. And then when you hear people, everybody, if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, we are actually not collectively insane. We are just repeating things that are public knowledge. These are all public knowledge scenarios. This is not something that we're fabricating. This is, you know, this is not like what our boy says. This isn't like what he says.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
It's not a conspiracy theory. These are all documented truths. But the fact of the matter is that we're not the type of people that will watch, you know, a country, you know, watch us go to war with Syria and then do this. That is not who we are. We are not going to get out there and cheerlead for a bunch of criminals trying to make money off of murdering people. It's just done. We're done with it. We're tired of it. That's why this whole revolution started with Ron Paul and the non-interventionists, and just being, different and being diplomatic and how you approach nations. And don't give nations just every year go, well, Israel, we cut you a check for $47 billion last year. We'll cut you a check for $47 billion this year. Oh, okay, that sounds good. Where are you guys getting this money from? I don't know. The Fed will make it up out of something, and then they'll take $85 billion of your tax dollars and go send it to offshore banks. Everything's fine. Everything's completely fine. So here, let me play this clip from Ben Swan, and this was about 3 months ago. And guys, hang on, because this is a little bit of a long one. It's about 13 minutes. I'll probably cut it short. But he really touches on all the high notes. And I know that I'm harping on this stuff, but guys, war is a big deal, especially when your government's funding the insurgents and then saying that the insurgents are the good guys. Really creepy, really, really creepy stuff. So here's a clip. Guys, I'm going to mute you for a minute, and then I'll pull you back up after this.
I'm Ben Swan, and thank you so much for watching this edition of Full Disclosure. I'm really glad that you're watching, because today we're talking about a very important story, one that has global significance, and yet is not being told at all in the West. Western media has all but ignored this issue. We're talking today about the 2-year-long civil war that's taking place in Syria. Now, if you listen to Western media and you listen to our government, then you would believe the people of Syria have been rising up to free themselves from the tyrannical grip of their president, Bashar al-Assad. And yet, is that the true story? Today, we're talking with a man who lives in Syria. In fact, he lives in Damascus. We did this interview via Skype. His name is Emilio Ibrahim. Now, what we do know for a fact is that the U.S. has been providing financial assistance to the rebels in Syria. The State Department admits that readily. We know that the Saudis, that Turkey, and that Qatar are also funding those rebels and providing them with weapons. But the part of the story that Mr. Ibrahim says that you may not know is that these Syrian rebels aren't Syrian at all. They're foreign professional terrorists who are affiliated with Al-Qaeda. They've moved into Syria, but he says they're gangs of terrorists who are terrorizing the country. At the end of the day, this interview was not designed to try to control or shape how you view what the United States is doing in Syria, but rather to open your eyes to some of the realities that Mr. Ibrahim says the rest of the Western media simply won't tell you about.
No,
that's why we call this Full Disclosure. Tell me about what the situation is like there right now, and what are you all seeing, what are you living through? Essentially, this civil war that's been going on there has been going on for some time, and would you even classify it as a true civil war?
We are suffering from terrorism since 2 years from now, and we are suffering from the lying media. Everybody from the Western countries, my friends, they are always talking about the revolution in Syria. And then I will fix their information and tell them that this is not a revolution, this is we are having a war in Syria. Sometimes they don't believe me, because they've been brainwashed for 2 years now, and the media channel.
When you say it's not a true revolution, it is a war, but it's not a revolution, Are you talking about specifically groups like Al-Qaeda who are really trying to take over the government of Syria at this point, as we have seen them do in Libya, as we have seen them do in other countries as well? Essentially, is it Al-Qaeda fighters who are attempting to take over the government in Syria? Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Absolutely true.
So that when you say that the media has been lying about this, are you specifically talking about the claims that this is a grassroots revolution, if you will, the people rising up to overthrow a dictator? Is that essentially the lie that you're referring to?
They are lying that there is a revolution, the people in Syria protesting against the government, but this is not true. Not true at all. The revolution cannot be with funding weapons and a lot of money, like we are seeing in here. A revolution is not beheading people and cutting their part of their body. The revolution, gangs in Syria and terrorists, they have targeted many innocent people.
For people here in the United States and people in the West, we hear all the time that President Assad is a tyrant, he's a dictator, he's cruel, that the people in Syria despise him, they want him gone, they want to see him removed from power. Is there truth to some of that? Is he a strong leader? Is he a cruel leader? Is he unwanted by the people? Is there truth somewhere in that narrative that we've heard in the West for 2 years?
There are many people went to every circle in Syria, in every city, for almost like 1 year and 3 months. Every Thursday and Friday, they protest against terrorists and holding the Syrian flag and holding the pictures of the president to support him, to support the Syrian Arab army. Millions of people. And I can send you many videos that I captured in my own camera. Millions of people, they are supporting our army against terrorism. But as I said before, you can't see this. Your media channel, not yours, but the Western media channel, they are showing what they want the people to think, not the truth. They want people the truth. They have to tell people the truth. They have to stop shutting down our media channels. So all the people here are supporting the government more than ever. Let me talk about myself. I have never support our government like I am supporting today. 2 years ago, all my friends, they were all shocked by seeing me talking about the mistakes of our government, and we need to change, many things. But right now, I'm supporting my government so much, more than ever. I will support my government against any foreign gang, against any foreign country. I'm not gonna stand with the U.S. government against my government. I'm not gonna stand with the Israeli government against my government. I'm not gonna stand with Saudi Arabia government. I'm not gonna stand with Qatar government against my government. Those countries, they have never, ever wanted the right thing to the Syrians. How come they want the right things to Syrians right now?
For people in the West, I think there's almost zero concept of this at all. But in Syria, up until 2 years ago, Christians and Muslims coexisted. They lived at peace together. There wasn't this persecution of, as you're saying, alloys and other religious groups. And today in Syria, that is not the case. Today in Syria, if you are anything other than, are you saying a Sunni Muslim, other than a Sunni, you are under intense persecution, is that correct?
If you are Sunni, not close-minded like them, if you don't have the same purpose, they want the same target, so you are, even if you were Sunni, you are targeted too, like Christians, like Shias, like all the rest of the religions.
Up until 2 years ago, you had never been asked what your religion was before, and you said, but today, that's very different.
Many people been asking me over and over, what is your religion? Because in their point of view, if you are, if you are a Christian, so that means you support the government. If you are Alawi, that means you support the government. If you are Shia, that means you support the government. But if you are Sunni, it depends. Maybe you support the government and maybe not. For 2 years, many people have asked me what my religion is. I have lived all my life in Syria and nobody asked me ever what my religion is. But now religion matters to some people.
You said that it defines, in many cases, which side of this so-called war you are on.
the small religions in Syria, like Christians, Catholic, Orthodox, and the rest, the small religions in Syria, like Christians, Druze, Shia, they are small here. They are all supporting the government in everything. And I have many Sunnis friends, they are supporting the government as well. But very few Sunnis and some Christians, like very small groups, they are against the government, but at the same time they are against this revolution. They want to make their revolution on their own, you know, the real revolution.
They want a true revolution. Right, they want a true revolution there. You said that there are beheadings, that if you are an alloy and you're caught, they will behead you and then they will rape you afterward. You said that you'll die in the most brutal way.
I remember the story. They went to an Alawi guy and they raped him and they cut his arms and legs.
So when you contacted me, Emilio, you said, I want to tell this story about what's really happening in Syria, because what you're seeing through, especially Western media, you say is not the truth. Why do you think Western media is not sharing the truth, at least the side of the story that you're sharing? I mean, maybe you can make the argument that, well, you're biased and this is your view. But it seems like your view isn't even being given not just equal time, but any time in Western media. Why is that?
The Western countries, they show off, they have freedom of speech, the whole media.
We do?
Not the whole media, very few media, like your program, Ben, and some other few, they are not being controlled of the government. So the majority of the media, the Western media, they are being controlled of the government, of their government. So, the U.S. government want to change the regime in Syria. So they will begin this in a war in media, and then by funding terrorists, and then funding them, and then sending more professional terrorists, trained terrorists, I mean.
All right, I had to shut that off. That was getting a little long, but Robert, I got you pulled up, and I think I got my other friend down in Florida pulled up. Robert, what do you make of that clip? I mean, this is stuff that we've already known, but I like making stuff public like this, especially on the broadcast, because then people can share it with others and say, no, listen, we're really funding this whole rebellion over there. This is not a pure natural revolution, like you said, that you would support. So, I mean, what do you make of all this?
Okay, so who was this guy again, real quick? He was...
The interviewer was Ben Swan. And
I knew that.
And the guy, I'll have to get his bio and stuff, but he is just I think he's just a local Shiite, obviously. Wait, is that what, hold on a second. He is a local, I'm assuming he's going to be a Shiite because, if he was a Sunni, he'd be all right because he'd be over there fighting with Al-Qaeda, but he's Shiite. So, I mean, what do you make of all of this as far as, actually, let me read this. I'm sorry, I kind of, here, let me get your thought first, and I want to read you an article.
Okay. Well, if this guy is legit, what he's saying is legit, which, I am going to err on the side of it's legit because I know most of the information he was saying. But it goes back to what I said before about how we're not allowing proving periods before we're throwing our hat in the ring. We're not allowing for these things to work themselves out internally before we start sticking our big nose in people's business.
Mm-hmm. Now, why is it that we always go after these countries? Why do we always go after these countries that don't have central banks? Why is that seem like a growing trend with the spread of Western democracy all over the Middle East? It's like, oh, you don't have a central bank. You need a revolution, is what you need. That's what you guys need. I mean, within 2 weeks of us invading of our liberation / bombardment of Libya, we we set up a central bank. That was the first thing we did. So, I mean, what do you think of that?
I think that's a very astute observation. And we've seen it happening more. But I think that's how they sell it to the people to get them to revolt, is because when these, in these tribes and different groups and different sects think about America, the very first thing they would think is the old 1950s push of economic freedom.
Sure.
And so the way they sell it to them is all like, yeah, you know how they did that, right? Central bank, that's what you need. Yeah.
That's it. You can print all the money you want and everything will be fine. Look at this.
And you'll be good to go.
Yeah, all you'll do is just be indebted to the World Bank, the IMF, and the Bank of International Settlements, and everything's gravy.
Yeah, exactly. But, and I think that's why you see more of these types of uprisings, not only because the central banks would love to have a bank in the country, but because it's an easier sell.
Mm-hmm. So I think I got my friend Andrew pulled up. Andrew, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you, man. So what do you make of all this stuff? I mean, you and I talk about this quite a bit, but we talk about it in like a very flitting way where we actually make fun of it and just kind of, add a little humor to it. But what do you make of all this stuff? And then it looks like they're going to get really aggressive over these next two articles that I've got that basically says that, Assad's got his anti-aircraft missiles now. He's got some SAM missiles, surface-to-air missiles, and he's basically telling Israel to bring it on. So, I mean, what do we make of all this, and why do you think that Americans love war so much?
This country was built on it, man. Don't we just have like a passion for kicking the crap out of people?
I think we do. I mean, who was it? I think KRS-One said that you'll never have peace on stolen land, but that's a very ominous way of looking at it. But I think that
we're the bully that makes it look legit. We just say, "Yo, we're good here, man. We're the global force of peace." Slow down, homie.
The Navy's new slogan is the global force for good. I mean,
are you serious?
No, you haven't seen that?
No.
Come on, man. You haven't seen the Navy commercial? Go pull you. All right, I'm going to put you on pause. Go YouTube the Navy commercial, and then at the very end it says, "The U.S. Navy, a global force for good." No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. Not a global force to come in and say what?
This is the Navy's commercial?
Yes. Just YouTube it. You'll find it. I mean, how much more out in the open do we have to be? I mean, are we the global government? Are we the global, crime syndicate mafia? Yes, we are. I hate to tell you this. So, Andrew,
but we're
your
doing
take
it with
on
the best of intentions, I mean, we're going over there, we're liberating people, man. We're hooking them up with cash and get rid of dictators, dude. I love this country. What are you talking about?
Dude, this is why I like hanging out with you, because you actually give just a great perspective, and you can really get into the mind of the zombies and just go, "What are you talking about, man? We're liberating them. They got a dictator over there. We got to get rid of them." Like,
Broncos are going to the Super Bowl. That's all I care about, man. What's Syria? Right. Who is that? Are they playing?
Dude, did Syria get an NFL team? I don't care about them then. That's just some country. Just parking lot them. Now they got Christmas there. That's fine. That's fine. I think Robert's still watching that video, but that's just the stuff that really kind of creeps me out. Here, let me read you some of this article that I pulled up. Assad warns Israel, claiming a stockpile of Russian weapons. No, he doesn't claim a stockpile. He actually received shipment the other day. So it says, President Bashir al-Assad, and this is out of the New York Times, so take that for what it's worth. I mean, as long as they don't say that he's got weapons of mass destruction, then we're probably pretty good here. President Bashir al-Assad of Syria displayed a new defiance in television interview broadcast on Thursday, warning Israel and suggesting that he had secured plenty of weapons from Russia, and his opponents father politically and Hezbollah fighters infuse their force into his military campaign. Assad spoke in an interview, which was owned by his ally Hezbollah, on a powerful Lebanese Shiite militant group, further punctuating his message of growing confidence he will prevail in the civil war that is more than 2 years old and has claimed more than 80,000 lives. Way to go, America. That's what I'm talking about. Where's my USA chant? It's down here somewhere. Oh, I got to get ready. I gotta have this thing on the ready. This has got to be moved up to the very top.
USA! USA! USA!
All right, good job, guys.
That still gives me shivers in my spine, man.
Doesn't that feel good to be enslaved? I mean, doesn't that feel good to have guys driving around in big armored vehicles pointing guns at people in black uniforms, and then you catch the supposed bad guy that might not have been the terrorist that his buddy said that they were, that the FBI was going to set him up and kill him, and his friend's like, nah, you can go in for questioning, and the FBI's like, oh, he died in questioning. We don't know what happened.
Yeah, you flipped the table. We were threatened.
So we fucking capped him in the head. Excuse my language. Good God, what a joke. What a joke. All right,
I heard
so
he
anyway.
pulled a knife. You know, that's dangerous weapon.
Oh, that's dangerous. You got to blast
now
somebody.
he pulled a knife. Man, they're doing the same thing again. You know, they're all like, he attacked it. He got loud with it. So he flipped the table. He shot himself.
He shot himself. He shot himself in custody with his handcuffs on. That's what happened. He was actually Jack Bauer in disguise, and you guys didn't know it. He pulled a gun from everybody and disarmed. He was actually Jackie Chan and Chuck Norris and Jack Bauer all wrapped into one. He took all the guns apart and then shot himself. All right. So anyway, all kidding
I
aside,
live in a free country. I have all the license and permits to prove it.
Yeah. I got a license for a gun. I got a license to drive. This is total freedom. Yeah, it's not complete enslavement, I promise you. All right. So anyway, sorry for the F-bomb there, guys, but it's just too funny. Okay, so asked about the Russian deliveries, Assad said the Russia is committed to Syria and implementing these contracts that we agreed upon with Russia will be implemented as part of being, and part of it has been implemented over the recent period, and we're continuing to implement it. Now, people say, why does Russia give a flying rip about Syria? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Russia's naval facility in Tartus. Now, all you have to do is Google Russian naval facility in Tartus, and you will find that that is the last Russian naval base in the Middle East. It is the last one that they have. And so, gee, I wonder why they want to support Syria. Oh, and by the way, if the United States of America takes Syria, we will completely surround Iran. Yippee.
Global force for good.
Hey, man, that's what we are. Dude,
right.
We are the global force for good. Did you get the
it wouldn't
video?
be such a big deal if we just roll out the one world government, dude. It would just make things so much easier. We could streamline this. UN, no more having militaries, no more borders.
And give all of our soldiers blue helmets. Give all of our soldiers blue helmets, and everything would be fine. I mean,
oh my God, you just found the selling point for anarchists for the one world government. No more borders. You know.
Oh. Thank you. See, eventually, one of these podcasts, we're gonna solve all the world's problems, and then we're just gonna have to, just go and share it with everybody. But we're just doing this one thing at a time, everybody. We're trying to figure out how to stop war in Syria, which will probably not happen because there's too much money to be made, and it's just too much money to be made in war. And who was it that said that? Can somebody Google search this for me? That war is a racket. Somebody search that for me while I'm sitting here waiting and trying to... You got me? Thanks, man. I'm going to continue reading here. He was vague on whether Russia's deliveries had included the advanced S-300 air defense system, which this thing is balling. I was sitting there looking at it and reading it online and what it can do. It can shoot down... hold on. Let me get the specs here at the very top. This is just...
Well, it was Smedley D. Butler, and
Smedley Butler.
Oddly enough, it was from his book, War is a Racket.
Oh, gee, I wonder what Smedley Butler did. Hey, we want you to have a Nazi takeover here in America. Like, no, look, we'll make you a dictator. Everything will be cool. I kind of feel like this is a bad idea. Just go with it, man. Just go with it. Everything's good. Everything's good. The Bushes funded Hitler. Everything's fine. All right, so let me see where it was actually talking about the capabilities of this bad boy. I can't find it off the top of my head. I'll have to find it in one of my clips. But it's pretty ballin'. Oh, here it is. The S-300 is regarded as one of the most potent anti-aircraft missile systems currently fielded. Its radar has the capability to simultaneously track up to 100 targets while engaging up to 12 of them at the same time. And the deployment time is 5 minutes. Holy cow.
Dude, you get that with the new Call of Duty, I heard.
Yeah, I mean, I think after you get like a certain amount of, after you kill a certain amount of jihadis on the new Call of Duty, or you can kill a certain amount of Al Qaeda terrorists that we fund, then you get to get the S-300 missile, and you get to blow up the entire map. It's pretty ballin'. All right, so I got to take a break here, guys, because we're going to split it up for the show. So give me about we're going to do about a 2-minute break here because I got to pay some bills. You know how things go. So I'm going to play. Let me find a good clip for us here. I'm going to play how an economic hitman operates, and this will give you guys kind of a clue into what's really going on over in Syria with all the guys running in with their weapons manufacturers. And I'll also read that article or talk about what Steve Pachenik said when he went over to North Korea when we had that big scandal with those guys, and about how within hours that all like the Boeing, Lockheed, all those guys were over there trying to sell them planes. Probably the same thing's going on over here because the corporations love us all so much, and they have our best intentions at heart.
So what I did specifically was identify countries that had resources that corporations covet, like oil, for example, and then arrange a huge loan to that country from the World Bank or one of the other big banking organizations. But the money would never actually go to the country. Instead, it would go to our own corporations to build infrastructure projects in that country. Huge projects like big power plants, hydroelectric plants, and transmission lines, and distribution stations, and multi-industrial parks, things that would benefit a few wealthy families in those countries, as well as our own corporations that built them, but wouldn't help the majority of the people who don't have enough money to buy much electricity, can't get jobs in industrial parks because they don't hire many people, and yet the people of the country would be left holding this huge debt that they couldn't repay. So at some point we go back in and say, hey, since you can't pay your debts, essentially give us your resources, your oil or whatever. Sell it to us at a very low price without any environmental or social regulations, without having to take care of the people in the country that we're exploiting, or allow us to build a military base on your soil or vote with us on the next critical United Nations vote. And in a few cases where we couldn't convince presidents to take on those deals, which were really bad for their countries, the jackals step in and they either overthrow governments or assassinate their leaders. And I talk about my own personal experience in Ecuador with the president there, Jaime Roldos, democratically elected president, Omar Torrijos of Panama. They didn't buy into these deals. They had a lot of integrity, and both of them were, and they wouldn't listen to me. They wouldn't buy my deal, and so both of them were assassinated.
Now, when they don't do the deal, the jackals come in. What do the jackals do?
Well, either overthrow the governments that we just saw this happen in Honduras with President Zelaya about 2 years ago, or they, and we've seen it, of course, happen with Allende in Chile and Arbenz in Guatemala and so on and so forth, or they assassinate the leaders, which we saw in my case with Jaime Roldos of Ecuador and Omar Torrijos of Panama. So they're either overthrown, and if they go kind of peacefully and they leave the country like Zelaya did in Honduras, okay. If they're not going to go peacefully, then they're taken out.
Or we just blow them up, or they die in a plane crash, or or we send in the Al Qaeda terrorists to fight them and pose as freedom fighters. Woohoo!
Don't forget the heart attack gun that was just recently declassified.
Oh, you know what, man? I'm gonna have to pull it on you.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
I gotta pull it on you, man. You cannot listen. You cannot use logic on this show.
To other countries and assassinate people just because they don't go along with what we say. That's crazy talk.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not buying that. I think that you are a conspiracy theorist. Never mind that Harps had weather weapons and all that stuff. Never mind any of that. Never mind them shooting a bunch of hydrogen bombs up into the atmosphere back in the 50s. Never mind. None of that stuff ever happened. That's complete conspiracy theory. No, just not even any validity to it. So that's it for that portion of the podcast. And we got about a good 20 minutes here, guys. And so I thought I would bring up a topic near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, especially in the liberty movement, and that is the legalization of Pretty much everything. Because if you're in the liberty movement and you believe that you are a self-owned individual, that you believe that you are responsible for yourself and that you can protect yourself and that you shouldn't be able to dictate what I can and can't put into my body, and I shouldn't be able to dictate what you can and can't put into your body. Now, I have some parameters with that. You can't go shoot up heroin and then go get behind a car. I mean, I guess you can as long as you don't kill anybody, technically, but you know, I do have some drawbacks to that, but I also understand that much like war, drugs is a bigger racket than war has ever been. Because I mean, that's how they brought down China, was through the opium wars and stuff like that. You know, going around buying off people. But you know, side issue. That's history. You actually have to read books and stuff to know that. So here is the article I want to read from you guys, and I want to get both of your takes on it. Marijuana legalization. Colorado governor signs first bill in history to establish a legal regulated pot market for adults. Yay! On Tuesday, Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper, no kidding, that is the dude's name, that's awesome, signed several historical measures to implement marijuana legalization in the state, establishing Colorado as the world's first legal, regulated, and taxed marijuana market for adults, which marijuana activists have been saying for years, just legalize it, tax it, and the government will make tons of money. And then I used to argue with them saying, no, you don't understand. The government ships the drugs in, and they want them to be illegal so they can jack the price up and make huge profits on it and then put us all into private prisons and make money doing that too. But then again, that would make me a, one of these.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Once again, reading books and understanding how the world works is a conspiracy theory. Okay, so it is complete craziness. Hickenlooper was a vocal opponent of marijuana legalization, who said Colorado is known for many great things and marijuana should not be one of them. Signed the first of the bills in history to establish legal marijuana market, as well as starting the development of a regulatory framework for cultivation, distribution, and production of industrial hemp. Oh my God, this guy is a terrorist. Somebody needs to go arrest this guy. This is craziness. And this is a quote, recreational marijuana really is in new territory, said Hickenlooper after signing on Tuesday. And although the governor has expressed opposition to marijuana legalization in the past, today he calls the bills, quote-unquote, common sense. Whoa! Dude, he's a thought criminal. This is complete thought crime right here. Jack Flowen, Hickenlooper's chief legal counsel, said, although we're opposed to marijuana legalization, quote, the will of the voters needs to be implemented. Oh my God. This is absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to get both of your takes on this, because this is like I live in a what do you call those things where you elect people and then they do what you tell them to do? A republic. Sorry. So we applaud Governor Hickenlooper for the initiative that he was taking to ensure the world's first legal marijuana market for adults will entail a robust and comprehensive regulatory system. That's awesome. These markets and other major milestones in the process of making a much-needed transition from failed policy of marijuana prohibition to a more sensible system of regulation. And it goes on. So, gentlemen, what do you think of the uber thought criminal Governor Hickenlooper? I'll go to Robert first. What do you think, Robert?
I think it's a Trojan horse. I think that the major word that I heard...
Please. I don't know how educated our audience is. Can you please explain what a Trojan horse is?
Well, the Trojan, or what was it? Was it the Trojans? They did it to the Trojans, not the Trojans doing it to someone else. But they built a big wooden horse, put a bunch of people in it, and said it was a gift, right? And and they took it in. Soldiers came out.
After they couldn't breach the walls, they decided that they were going to offer a quote-unquote peace offering, I think is what it was entailed, but in essence it was a big setup. And then in the middle of the night they brought the Trojan horse in, the guys jumped out, and and this is actually one of the craziest battles you'll ever read about, and they talk about how they indiscriminately went around killing everybody that they saw. And I believe that was in Constantinople, but I could be wrong, I'll double check. Go ahead.
Okay. But that's what the word that I heard the most in that, well, what you were reading was the word regulation. And that scares me when a bunch of politicians start talking about regulating something, because that usually ends up destroying a free market for it. So yeah, it'll be this great thing for a while as a bunch of small businesses pop up trying to take over their little area for what they do and what they offer. But through those same regulations, you're going to see a crony capitalistic movement inside large corporations, eventually bring it to what cigarettes are today.
Funnel it right to the top.
Okay, so Andrew, what are your thoughts on that? You kind of share the same
I got a
sentiment?
problem asking government, period, to allow me to put something into my body which, when I do, causes no harm to myself or anyone around me. In fact, more so than any state-approved drug on the market. That's the problem I got with it.
I hear you.
We shouldn't have to ask permission.
Trojan Horse was the city of Troy. I don't know why we all kind of blanked on that one. But it was to go get it was to go get Helen. Was it Helen of Troy? Is that one? I don't know. Anyway, I have to reread that story.
That's because I'm self-medicating, but
you can't be a thought criminal, man. Okay, so piggybacking on top of that, how about this? As you talk about mass marketing, ex-Microsoft manager plans to create first U.S. marijuana brand. Oh, exciting. A former Microsoft executive plans to create the first U.S. national marijuana brand with cannabis, and he hopes to eventually import legally from Mexico, that he said would be kicking off his business by acquiring medical pot dispensaries in 3 U.S. states. Can I get some people with some decent names today? Jamin Chevalier, a former Microsoft corporate strategy maker, said that he envisions that Seattle-based enterprise becoming a leader in both recreational and medical cannabis, much like a Starbucks is the dominant name of coffee, he said. Now, this is an entrepreneur right here, but I think that this is going right down the path that Robert doesn't want it to go, where it's going to go through the usual paths that we all resist of coercion and using government to shut down your competition. Shavery's 45, whose 6 years at Microsoft ended in 2009, said he was soliciting investors for $10 million in startup money. The use, sale, and possession of marijuana remains illegal in the United States under federal law. Yep, remember, because there are our gods, so we have to remember what they say. The 2 states have, however, legalized recreational marijuana use are among the 18 states that allow it for medical use. It is a giant market in search of a brand. Now, why do these guys always think that we need a brand? I mean, quit. Oh, anyway, I'm a marketing guy.
USA.
Dude, I'm a marketing guy. This drives me absolutely crazy. Everybody's like, oh, you got to have a brand. You got to have something. Just leave it alone. Just let it be. So Chevalier said the marijuana industry, we would be happy to get 40% of its worldwide. Holy cow, you're looking for the big boy. All right, Robert, you wanted to say something before I continue here?
Yeah, I was going to say that just reminds me of Bill Hicks. Like, Bill's going for the angry dollar right now. That's really what Bill's scheme is. Right now, they're going for the pot dollar right now. That's a smart dollar. A lot of money in the pot dollar. You might, oh, he's going for the conspiracy theory dollar now. Wow, man, you're getting a lot of money in that conspiracy theory dollar today.
Dude, Bill Hicks was a genius, comic genius. If you could somehow. This is where I would actually like cloning. If you could clone him and George Carlin and make a comedian, oh my God, that would be just absolutely hysterical.
Make a president. No.
Oh,
Manchurian candidate.
Oh, that would be great. And if you guys have never heard this, I highly recommend it. You should listen to George Carlin's Idea America, where he talks about the different sections. You'll have like a criminal section, and then you'll have like the baby section, and then like the murder section, and then you just open them up and let them all integrate. It's just absolutely hysterical. So it continues in the article. A 2005 United Nations report estimated that global marijuana trade was valued at $142 billion. Now, see, if they legalize it everywhere, then that'll knock that in about a third. So it's still a pretty decent chunk, about 60 billion. No, a little bit less than that, about 50. So Washington State and Colorado became the first 2 states to legalize recreational marijuana, and then voters approved legalization in November. Shavely laid out his plans among his vision for the future in which marijuana will be imported from Mexico, and on the Thursday night news conference in a sit-down in Seattle. Joining him was former
the future that's happening now. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, all right, for the future, yeah, exactly. I mean, this is not a really great well-written article, but it could be part of the delivery mechanism as well. So, could also be that. What difference does it make if Jamin here is sitting instead of Kapu Gosman, who said to Fox, referring to the fact that he would rather see chivalry selling marijuana legally than Mexican drug kingpin selling it illegally. The story that has begun to be written, this is the story that has begun to be written here. Shaveley told Reuters, and he hoped Fox would serve as an advisor.
I think this guy was high when he wrote it.
Say what now? This guy probably was, man. Shaveley told Reuters that he hoped Fox would serve in an advisory role in his enterprise, dubbed, Jesus, can I please get some decent names? Diego Pelicer? Good God. After Shaveley's hemp-producing great-grandmother. Sale of cannabis or marijuana remains illegal in much of the world, and although countries mainly in Europe and America have decriminalized the possession of small quantities of it. Oh, really? Like maybe 5 states, or 15. A larger number of countries have decriminalized or legalized cannabis for medical use. And it just goes on, because I don't want to read Cynthia Johnson's writing anymore. This is not very good. So, anyway, you guys get the overall picture. I mean, what do you guys think of this? Obviously, we have the legalization of marijuana, which is a step in the right direction for total decriminalization of all drugs. You know, not to get into a philosophical debate, but I think we all share the same sentiment that, number one, government is a racket, and that it shouldn't be allowed to dictate what we can and can't put into our body, especially when it restricts, nutrients and vitamins and stuff like that around the world. So, Robert, I'll go to you first. What do you make of this guy trying to make a brand out of, turning, grapes into wine, if you will, or lemons into lemonade?
Well, I mean, yeah, you asked what my thoughts were on it. Realizing I told you my fear, and this guy is pretty much coming in and doing on a massive scale exactly what I would be afraid of. Mm-hmm. What I would rather see than the legalization of marijuana, and then, of course, what follows immediately after they write a law is regulation. Mm-hmm. I would just like to see them repeal the fact that it's illegal and replace it with nothing. That, you know what I mean? It's a plant, it grows, that's what it does. We don't have laws regulating daisies. We don't have laws regulating roses. You know what I'm saying? Why are we regulating it?
Well, I mean,
they clearly can make money off of it.
Of course. It's like why did they regulate? Why did they regulate tobacco? Why do they tax tobacco? Because the greedy politicians and the lobbyists and the special interest groups can make tons and tons of money off this. And believe me,
but one thing I could say about it though is, since I've been buying it for at least almost 15 years now. Mm-hmm. Gas and everything else, all the stuff around us has gone up because of inflation, but that bag not gone up. That's one amazing thing.
Well, I would say it's a $5 difference in either direction is the most I've ever seen in the 15, 20 years that I have been associated with such things.
Okay, but that's, if you look at it in a very stripped down categorical sense, that is the free market dictating the price, not the regulators and the speculators and the brand marketeers dictating the price to the public. Would that be correct in saying that it's just basically a method of demand versus supply?
What I'm saying is I think that the price, like if you go and get it from a dispensary, the price is the same as almost the street value that you're getting it for. So if government wasn't involved and it wasn't this big ordeal and it was local guys that could start growing and selling it, just like you'd go to a farmer's market, you'd notice the price would go down.
Man, that would be one farmer's market. I tell you what, farmer's market would
the end user would be the beneficiary of not having the regulation.
That I would sell so many fruits, vegetables. You guys would be. I mean, they would come.
That would be the
with
best
like a truck and be like, all right, here's the farmer's market. Oh. You have to start out here by the marijuana plant. Oh, okay. And by the time you get done, you would get back to your car and be like, oh, my God, I got all this fruit. How did I buy this?
Yeah, you're gonna have juices. You're going to have munchy food.
You're going to have the first 24/7 farmer's market is what you're going to end up with.
Why are you? And then you'll have that one guy. You'll have that one guy trying to pull the door instead of push it, and he'll be like the guy banging on the door, you know, in the mall. Why are you closed? Why are you closed?
But I will say, I like the fact that the conversation. I may not like what they're doing legally in these two states. Okay, but I like the conversation that it's creating across the country, and the fact that we can even carry this conversation on the internet where people are listening, and not have to be worried about saying, well, I hear through a friend of a friend that the price is. We can say, oh yeah, we do that, whatever, you know. It's
well,
not
I don't know though.
stigma.
The way they hauled Adam away, we might be concerned anymore.
Oh, well,
but see,
yeah.
here's the thing. I mean, they've already got all your digital communications anyway. It's not like that we're telling them something that they haven't already read, seen, know about you in the first place. So, you know, it's not being secret anymore.
Well,
but
yeah.
I think that
I
think that what you're seeing with pot in general, and not to get on a big, you know, pot tirade, but I mean it's a pretty hot topic because you have people that you have the status. And I'm going to plug your video. You guys need to go check out the Journalistic Revolutions video, The Status. What's the actual title of it, Robert?
Status Anonymous, Step 1, Acceptance.
Okay, so basically it's trying to convey to you that everybody has status tendencies. Everybody has this tendency to be, well, I need to have somebody. See, because here was my first status kind of subconscious reaction, is that, well, we do need some kind of regulation because, you know, I don't want Monsanto out there, you know, making me pot that's going to make me sterile or doing something like that. But at the end of the day, do we really need a whole bunch of regulation, or do we have just a large? I mean, it gets into a really slippery slope because how do you understand who's cultivating it and how, and what kind of products they're putting on it? Because if you have people stressed out about GMOs and what they're putting into their body anyway, especially people that are going through cancer and stuff like that and chemo, where marijuana has shown to have an incredible amount of just, you know, results as far as getting people to eat and develop an appetite when they're going through chemotherapy. You know, how do we ensure that they're getting good quality product and not some bootleg version that, you know, Joe Bob sprayed with Roundup on accident?
Well, I think that the system already, the system that's in place for that, for the cultivation and the sales and distribution of marijuana, it's already self-regulatory, and that's why I said I'd rather just see them abolish it being illegal and not put anything else in place, because I know who has the better stuff. You know what I mean? I know where it's happening. And then what you do when you just abolish the law is you just make it okay for the cultivators to come out and go, that's my product. That's the only thing that you would be really changing in the system, is making it okay for them to come out of the closet, if you will.
But so then you kind of side with the. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Even with the regulation, though, look at or with our food all the time. There's stuff that passes and somebody gets sick, somebody dies, and look how much regulations on that. I think the free market, if you really understand the free market, it's going to determine if you want to sell your product and you want return business, you're going to have to put out a good product.
Okay, guys, we got about 2 minutes to wrap it up. So I appreciate both of you on this. So, I mean, at the end of the day, do we believe? At the end of the day, what do you guys think the timeline is for decriminalization of marijuana? Total decriminalization, not legalization. I hate that word. I'm talking about decriminalization. What do you guys think? Robert, what's your take?
Real quick, I think that we could see it within the next 5 years, in the current pace that we have.
Okay, Andrew?
I would agree with that.
Okay, I'm kind of right there with you. Just depending, it can go a couple of years either way, depending on how hard people push. But I think the most important thing is that if you look into stuff like this, and I know that there's a big stigma in the liberty movement that we're all a bunch of potheads, and that's not it. Here is the big $100 billion enchilada of the liberty people. People in the liberty movement understand that marijuana, and they've done the research, marijuana was made criminal in a very unjust way. And it has remained criminal because of the stigma that DuPont and all these other large corporations that make cotton that don't want to deal with industrial hemp. And I guarantee you the corn subsidy people don't want to deal with industrial hemp either, because it makes an incredible biofuel. So that's why it was exciting to me to see them talk about industrial hemp, because that's really going to open up an entirely new world for, not just from a mental perspective of people looking at it and saying, oh my God, I thought this was really evil and the system sold me on this was really evil, but it was actually the system that made it illegal and then told me all through my life that it was evil. So I think that this is kind of like the straw that might break the system's back, in the fact that if people really understand why it was made criminal in the first place, then they'll start to look at other things and kind of laugh at them too. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Robert, quickly plug your stuff really quick. Andrew, thanks for coming on board, man. And first time I've had you on the show in a while. Always enjoy the insights. So I'm going to let you go. Thanks for coming on board, man.
See you guys.
See you, man. All right, so Robert, plug your stuff really quick, and then I'm going to debut my interview with Adam Kokesh from yesterday. It was pretty funny, pretty powerful. But you got a minute, man. Where can people find you and Matthew and the work that you're doing?
Yep, you can always check us out at journalisticrevolution.com and look us up on YouTube by the same name, also on Facebook, and and Liberty Movement Radio, of course.
Absolutely. So thanks for coming on, man. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, my interview with Adam Kokesh right out of jail. So take care, everyone. Oh, sorry about the confusion, man. Everybody, ladies and gentlemen, without further delay, Adam Kokesh from the Adam versus the Man podcast. Adam, thanks for coming on board, man.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, we were just chatting before offline that I was watching your interview on Alex Jones, and I think that was a very good thing that you tried to get him to see what you're really trying to accomplish with the march. And before we get into everything with the march and stuff, I just wanted to do a reset for everybody. So I want to hear it from your perspective about what happened on that day. I was talking to I'm friends with Daryl, as you know, and I've had him on the show, and we were kind of talking about how the setup of the event was, and it was a little bit precarious, seeing all the fencing and everything around. And you guys even had a discussion about, is this something that we should even do? So start from the beginning and talk about all the way through the actual event itself, about you getting, accosted by the guys in costumes. What transpired on that day?
Well, I guess it has to start with the history of the event, that this was Smokedown Prohibition 5. We had done this 4 times before with no intervention and no violent assaults whatsoever. And it was kind of out of the blue, but they had put up fences around the area, around the free speech zone in front of Independence Hall. And, it was a pretty clear setup. When we decided it was time to light up at 420, they rushed into the crowd after someone else that had already lit up, and I didn't have anything on me. I think this is where they went wrong. In one of the ways, they assumed that I would have weed on me, and I didn't that time. As much by coincidence as anything, and I not had my wallet on me deliberately. But I'm really glad I was ready in this case, because what they did is they charged through the crowd, charged past me, as even the affidavit said, pushed past me to get to someone who had lit up, and in the course of doing that, deliberately brushed past me, grabbed me under my arm, and I put my hands up and tried to step away, but was being pulled into this takedown.
Right.
And then one of the officers decided that because his hand got stuck in my armpit as he grabbed me, that I was assaulting him, and he tried to tackle me. And as you can see from the video that we just released, exclusive Adam Kokesh arrest footage, damning footage that shows how I was set up by the feds. You can see from all the different camera angles how ridiculous the assault charge against me was. But that's what makes it a little worrisome when you step back and consider this, that that I was set up and they tried to frame me. I mean, there's no other way around it, because I ended up being charged with a felony assaulting, resisting, and impeding a federal officer.
Now, one of the things that Daryl and I kicked back and forth around, and this is just me being a conspiracy theorist, not trusting known liars, but we were looking at it as a methodology or a way that if they were going to set you up and charge you with a felony, that it was a way to keep you. Obviously, if you're a convicted felon, you can't do an open carry march on across the Washington Bridge or the I can't remember what the name of the
Memorial.
bridge.
Yeah.
Thank you. But we saw that as a way to kind of stonewall you from not leading the march, and then as we got into the dialogue, it wasn't so much about about you leading the march as it about everybody getting together, and now the march has morphed into this thing that when I first read the statement, and I would actually like for you to read the statement so we can hear it again, because it does sound a lot better when you say it with your enunciation as opposed to if you just read it off the screen. But when I first heard it, I was like, oh, this sounds kind of crazy. Is he calling for an armed march on every capital? But then after reading it a couple of times, I was like, no, he's calling for the real restoration and talking about the defunding by getting the governors to all come together in a governor's council and say, hey, we need to start defunding this fraudulent system. So you got the floor, man.
When a government has repeatedly and deliberately failed to follow its own laws, violated the fundamental human rights of its citizens, threatened the sanctity of a free press, created institutions intended to eliminate privacy of communication, waged war at the behest of special interests that threatens the public safety, killed hundreds of children with drone strikes, imprisoned and destroyed the lives of countless individuals for victimless crimes, stifled economic opportunity to maintain the dominance of the financial elite, stolen from the people through an absurd system of taxation and inflation, sold future generations into debt slavery, and abused its power to suppress political opposition, it is unfit to exist, and it becomes the duty of the people to alter or abolish that government by whatever means necessary to secure liberty and ensure peace. A new American revolution is long overdue. This revolution has been brewing in the hearts and minds of the people for many years, but this Independence Day shall take a new form as the American Revolutionary Army will march on each state capital to demand that the governors of these 50 states immediately initiate the process of an orderly dissolution of the federal government through secession and reclamation of federally held property. Should one whole year pass from this July 4th while the crimes of this government are allowed to continue, we may have passed the point at which nonviolent revolution becomes impossible. The time to sit idly by his past, to remain neutral, is to be complicit. Just doing your job is not an excuse, and the line in the sand has been drawn between we, the people, and the criminals in Washington, D.C. While some timid souls will say that it is too early, that we can solve this problem through democratic means provided by government, that current levels of taxation are reasonable for the services provided, and that the crimes of this government are merely a tolerable nuisance, it may already be too late. While there is risk in drastic action, the greater danger lies in allowing this government to continue unchallenged. So if you are content with the status quo, stay home, get fat, watch the fireworks from a safe distance, and allow this Independence Day to pass like any other. But if you see as we see and feel as we feel, we will see you on the front lines of freedom on July 4th, 2013 for this, the final American Revolution.
See, it sounds so much better when you say it. My internal voice sounds like a little child. It does. It's really funny. But how now you were in when you wrote that? Were you in solitary? Is that what they put you in?
No. Well, we were in the special housing unit, but fortunately they put myself and Mr. Poe together. I suppose they wanted to listen in on our conversations, but we were aware of that from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you guys wrote that, how long did that take you to write? Is that something you just did, like compiled over a couple of days, or is it just an epiphany to you to just say, I have got to get all this down on paper? Because that's what kind of happens to me sometimes is you'll get in, and I'm sure you experience this as well, being in radio and doing writing and stuff, is that you get into this kind of a zone and then it just flows. Is that what happened, or was it kind of a couple of rewrites in order to get the concise thought out there?
Well, it was an epiphany that hit me when I realized that the government had already escalated their tactics by arresting me, by framing me, and that it made me very uncomfortable doing something as significant as the open carry march on Washington if they were willing to initiate force against someone simply for organizing this. And I thought an appropriate way for us to escalate our tactics in in parallel would be to make this open source and distribute it across all 50 state capitals where people can engage in whatever civil disobedience they feel is appropriate. But I want to point out that what we're really doing here is saying that let's do things the easy way. Let's do things the peaceful way, because if we don't do this, what we're facing with the inevitable collapse of the United States federal government is going to be far worse. If we don't come out now and start changing the conversation to say, look, we're better off without the federal government than we are with it, then what we're going to find is the end of America that comes from delusion and having your head buried in the sand. But if enough people wake up in time, then we don't have to face that. We don't have to face that collapse. But, in a way, I feel kind of like a sleazebag politician here. And if you know the old saying, when you see a riot, jump in front of it and call it a parade. And in a way, what I'm talking about is really not that revolutionary. It is already happening. It is just a matter of, do we do it deliberately and acknowledge the situation that we're in, or do we continue to be in denial about the state of America and the federal government?
I think that a lot of it has to do with, and I'm sure that you've seen this before. Have you seen the videos of the terrorist attack over in the UK? I'm sure you've seen those where the guy was chopping people up with a hatchet and a machete and stuff. Yeah. Okay. So here's what concerns me, and this is just me thinking out loud. What concerns me is that you have a general population all around the world that has been conditioned through, and you touched on this earlier, but I really want to get into this because this is what fascinates me. You have a general population that is raised about the time you and I are. I'm 35, you're about 31. You're 31, right?
31.
Yeah, they said you were 41 in the police report. They're just trying to make you look old.
Yeah, really.
But what happened was you start to see these people, and they obviously witness somebody get attacked and just get beheaded right in the middle of the street, and nobody does anything. So what concerns me is that, yes, we have a bunch of internet activists, and this is what I try to preach to my audience a lot. Don't be an internet activist and then just think that your job is done. You have to actually physically show up. You have to physically be there. Show physical presence. And what scares me is that we have a public that is engaged in a virtual sense, but when you look at it in a true physical sense, they become scared. Now, this coming from a country that had a bunch of founding fathers that were taking on the largest, most diabolical empire that has ever existed, and they ended up winning. What would those founding fathers look at our public now and say? I mean, do they look at us and think that we're a bunch of chicken you-know-whats, or do they look at us and say, you guys just need the right kick in the butt, and this might be the right kick in the rear?
Well, I think that's what's so exciting about taking a bold stand like this, is you really expose all the false prophets of freedom who are going out there saying, yeah, the founders are great, they're awesome, they wouldn't put up with this stuff, they would fight back, they raised arms, and then they go, oh my God, Adam Kokesh wants to dissolve the federal government. No, we can't do that. That's scary. They're going to come after us. And it's like, hey, they already have.
Yeah, they already spy on you, dude. I mean, that's what I tell people. I'm like, listen, they've been spying on you for 10 years, and everybody asks me, they're like, aren't you afraid of putting this stuff on Facebook? I'm like, dude, they know who we are. They're not dumb. I'm like, this is the kind of stuff that if you band together, I mean, the March on Monsanto here in Atlanta got about 1,500 people, and the paper reported it 700. As usual, they're going to underestimate something that's going to be of, vital significance. But if you guys will march for Monsanto, a stupid corporation, why won't you march on a government flying a flag in your name, droning people, killing people, and now talking about invading a nation that has not done anything to anybody? At what point, and what's really exciting to me is that, Adam, I think that everybody under the age of 40, and especially the younger generation, you touched on this earlier, I talk to a bunch of people when I'm out at restaurants and stuff like that, especially teenagers. Almost all of them proclaim themselves as libertarians. And it's exciting for me to see that, because they have broken through the bipartisan wall, if you will, of seeing how fraudulent both of these systems are. And it's like, oh, well, Barack Obama was funded by Wall Street. And like, oh, Mitt Romney's financial advisor was the head of the World Bank. I mean, come on. At the end of the day, we need to do something that's going to galvanize the public, and I think that this is going to do it. Now, we just have to get the traction out there and the people. The big thing is the people, and I think that that's what you're trying to do with this. Now, how are you guys organizing this march? I mean, do you have people in each state, or how is it being organized?
Yeah, we have a national coordinator so that people can step up and ensure that efforts aren't being duplicated, and there's kind of an official point person, at least, as a coordinator or facilitator for each state. And for people that want to get involved that way, I really encourage it. There are also Facebook events for each state event separately, as well as several territories. So the coordinator is Jeffrey Phillips, and you can get him at Jeffrey, Jeffrey, at adamversustheman.com to get involved locally. And this is a really great opportunity to start reaching out with some of these important ideas about what do we actually do to get out of the situation. And for everybody that attacked the idea of an open carry march, not a single one of them said, oh, the government's a good idea. You really shouldn't challenge the government at all. Like the overthrow of the government, that's a bad idea. We love the federal government. You know, nobody said that. Well, now it's time to actually step up, because I'm asking for the individual risk to be a lot less. But people were doing this anyways. People were already stepping up, and we're holding events in solidarity with what we had planned for D.C. So I hope that people take this as an opportunity, not just to get to that critical mass and to galvanize the public, as you say. I think we're a ways off from that, Jake, but if nothing else, I really do believe that this Independence Day, to start the final American Revolution in this form with an eye towards the dissolution of the federal government, will begin with a changing of the conversation. And just by asking that question, it's not do you want America to end, it's how do you want America to end? Do you want it to end with your head in the sand and with a dangerous and violent collapse of a government going through its death throes? Or do you want an orderly, peaceful dissolution and an assertion of your rights as an individual to happen through an orderly process? And I think this is going to really radically alter the conversation, because so many people have given up on this idea that we're going to fight back government by fighting one issue at a time, or that we're going to battle for every inch while the government takes a mile behind our backs. And as you pointed out, the younger generation really gets this when they see, holy crap, I just turned 18 and my share of the federal debt is over $50,000. You got to be kidding me. And they face all of these problems of how much of their income goes towards government when they had no say in it whatsoever. And it is, in a sense, very much a youth-oriented revolt, as the youth say, we are not going to pay for the mistakes of our parents. We are going to fix them.
Now, was it Thomas Jefferson that said that each generation should be responsible for its own debt? I can't remember who said that.
Well, he also said that we should have a revolution with every generation.
Absolutely, and whether it's peaceful, violent, what have you, I think that what you're trying to do here is you're not trying to provoke violence, and that's what I tried to explain to people when they said that, hey, this armed march on Washington is not a good idea. And I said the fact that you can say that to me already makes me believe that it is a great idea.
An essential idea.
Right. You're terrified of your government, and when the government fears the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. So, like you said, it's either you choose the route of the 7,000 armored vehicles and the 2 billion bullets for civil unrest, or you choose this route and just go and show a civil disobedience, show your complete disdain for the federal government and the way that they're behaving, and waving our flag all over the world as they bomb innocent people and attack, nations that haven't attacked anybody. So now here's a philosophical question for you, because I heard you and Alex talking about this, and I always had this question too. How do we get is there a way that we transition from a restoration, like he calls it, the restoration of the republic, and I would see it as a defunding of the federal government, but keeping it in place for, like he said, civil defense and stuff like that. That's one thing that I would say is okay. So how do we transition, even if we did get to this point where everybody knows that the government's criminal and we're going to at least defund it? Do we make the leap to true volunteerism, or do we have a reinstitution of the federal government and then slowly wean it towards volunteerism? Is it just a big leap, or do we go in steps? What do you see happening, or what do you think of the best method is?
I think it's really both, and it happens concurrently, and which happens first is in a way irrelevant, because it's already happening that people are waking up. And if you see it as part of a larger continuum, it helps put it in perspective. But we will recognize how and when certain mechanisms of governance have reached a sort of public critical mass of understanding as to their detrimental effects. And that being the case, more people will be waking up as a result. So I think you're going to have kind of a cascading effect as more people embrace voluntarism. But it's going to take, it's going to happen along with the mechanisms of government being dissolved. So they're not separate or independent processes as much as parallel processes.
Okay, great. Because the way that I was kind of understanding it is that it was going to be a great leap forward, no pun intended right there, a great leap forward as opposed to a kind of a planned simultaneous tactical, defunding of the federal government, rise in liberty, and then moving towards voluntarism. And is that what you're kind of pushing with this at least ideology that we're trying to get across to people?
Right, and even if all of a sudden everybody woke up and said, "Oh, we're voluntarists now. We don't want to, we don't want to impose our will on anybody else by force ever." We still find ourselves in the world of the daily routines of the statist paradigm, and where so many people are dependent for their very livelihoods on specific mechanisms of that. And I don't want to pull the rug out from underneath anybody. So really, we have to do this in an orderly, peaceful way, or it's going to be a lot more painful, and then you have vacuums. And the way to avoid the vacuums is to, as you're doing this, and this is not like we have any choice, this is how it's happening, is to ensure that people are asserting their self-ownership, and that is what fills the power vacuum, is people leading their own lives and saying, I am going to be in charge of myself now. I don't need to be a slave. I don't need to be a part of a herd or a member of the collective. And that's what fills the power vacuum. If you just have the mechanisms come apart, then oftentimes you will have some backlash.
Oh yeah, or you end up like Egypt, and you have an overthrow of that government, and then you have the Muslim Brotherhood in here, and now they're twice as worse off as they were before we went in there. So I understand what you're saying about the power vacuum. Go ahead.
That was the problem with calling for democracy. They wanted democracy, and they got exactly what they asked for.
Yeah, you got mob rule. Congratulations, great work, guys. But it's one of those things that I think that this July 4th should be, and everybody should mark it on your calendar. If you're an activist, you've got no excuse to not go and participate in this, even to just show face. Because what this is going to show is, like Adam and I were alluding to before, you're going to have those people that are scared, and rightfully so. 2 billion bullets and a lot of armored vehicles is kind of scary, especially after you saw the kind of crap that they pulled up in Boston. That's kind of scary stuff. But at the end of the day, I think that you said this before, the scary thing is what we do, what happens if we don't stand up, if we don't start now with peaceful resistance and be visible. And that's the whole thing. The reason that Adam wasn't taken away by the feds and thrown in some dungeon somewhere and shipped off to Gitmo is because he's visible, and you had people there with cameras and just being a presence. And that's where we need to take. And I know that you're friends with Luke Radowski. What do you think of him and what he did to Henry Kissinger that just came out today? Did you see that, or a couple of days ago? Did you see the...
It's funny. I haven't seen it, but I just was interviewed by Luke, who came to visit me here at the studio, and told me about it. So, yeah, I understand that he's still doing great work.
Man, he is. It's just absolutely amazing. But that's the kind of stuff we need, is we need citizen journalists everywhere, and people like Adam that are going to be out on the front lines, and I'll be out on the front lines here in Atlanta. I know that I have some questions here in the chat room about what do people do if there's not a, is there anything going on in Florida? Is there anything going on here? But I think you guys can just direct those, and we'll give the name out at the end to Jeffrey Phillips at the end, and he'll kind of get you guys pointed in the right direction. But finishing up, what was the, now you said that when you got processed and stuff like that, did you refuse processing at the beginning of the arrest? And talk about all the different civil liberties violations, because I know that you know the law really well. And how many different violations did you see out of your just circumstance that you went through?
Oh man, I still haven't even started the process of hiring a lawyer to do the counting for me. Yeah, it was pretty obscene, and not just in the detention process. And I did refuse to cooperate in a number of different ways. But I think next time I'm going to actually step it up, and I think this should be practice for all political activists. If you're arrested, make it as hard as possible and go limp and mute.
And just make it as expensive for them as possible, and just non-compliance the whole way through. So give people some examples, because you've been arrested and detained a couple of times. So give people some examples of what they can do to make it a little bit more challenging for the guys in costumes.
Well, I mean, just not giving your name or your birth date or any information, not having ID on you. If you have ID on you, they can detain you and then cite you or even put you out on bail based on that information. And you know, you're pretty well legally screwed at that point. But if you remain silent, exercise your right, and you don't have any identifying information on you, it puts them in a much more difficult situation. Now, you take a certain risk with this,
of course,
and you really do have to acknowledge that you're playing hardball, and that's what I did. And you know, I really got to thank everybody on the outside again who made it possible to execute that strategy with all the leverage behind it, because if it wasn't that much more difficult for them to keep me in prison, then my, you know, relatively small stuff on the inside would have been, you know, would have just been ignored, and they would have kept me in the hole. But I refused to identify myself when, you know, until they fingerprinted me, which they would have been able to do by force anyways. And I gave only identifying information. I refused to answer any other questions. But when it came down to it, after the hearing Thursday, when they were still charging me with a felony, even though we'd exposed in court their testimony to be absurd, they were trying to get me out on bail with absurd conditions that I wouldn't be able to be armed, to be in a house with firearms, or to be able to travel without permission. And I said, screw that. I'd rather stand and fight than let you make me you know, a quasi-prisoner for you know, an indefinite amount of time. And because I refused to take a PPD shot, a tuberculosis test, I said it's against my religion to allow government agents to put needles in my body. And I refused to take a DNA test, and I said it's okay, my DNA is just fine, it doesn't need to be tested. They threatened to strap me to my bunk and perform those tests on me. And I played the God card on one of these guys who was a Catholic, and was like, oh, so you're going to do this because politicians put words on paper. I hope that God forgives you, and I played God to him. But when I refused to take bail, I was basically volunteering for up to 100 days in solitary confinement. They had me with N.A. Poe because we had been arrested together, and we were both being held away from the general population. And because I had refused to take the PPD shot, they weren't allowed to house me with any other inmates. And for my own safety, I thought I was better off in that situation. And I was okay. I was resigned, you know, up to 30 days for an indictment, up to 70 days for a speedy trial. And I was fine. All right, you know, I'll do it. I'll sit here. I'll write my book. I'll write letters. I'll be fine. I mean, it's really not that bad. I was in combat. You know, you're not going to scare me with this. And the strategy worked better than I could have possibly imagined, because, you know, the very next day I was just like in solitary for another 12, 16 hours, and they just banged on the hatch and hey, you're leaving. And I was at the back of my head going, wait a second, this is the part where I go to a CIA facility. But no, they just you know, showed me the door and unceremoniously dumped me in the rain on the Philly sidewalk there. And as I was out, I had actually gone through almost all the out processing, and the last thing is they give you your personal effects, and it was the officer that was testifying against me who had to do it as the Park Service representative, and he put all my stuff on, you know, on the table in front of me, and then he said, here, you're going to sign this form for this, and then you're going to sign these 2 citations. And I just laughed at him, and I said, yeah, I'm not going to sign those. Really, what are you going to do? Lock me back up? I'm not going to pay, you know, pay a fine or accept your citation for standing next to someone smoking pot because you wanted to frame me. Give me a break. So I refused to sign them. They're null and void. I'm probably going to burn them in front of the White House on June 8th, and it's important to point out we have another event coming up, Smoke Down Prohibition Joint Summit with President Choom, just to underscore the hypocrisy of this government. And we're going to be engaging in civil disobedience in front of the White House on Saturday, June 8th at 4:20. We're asking people to gather at 3:30. And there's information about that and more at adamversustheman.com/calendar. But you know, that was it. We just, you know, I played hardball and I won. And N.A. Poe, we found out just today, because his strategy, and he was able to execute his strategy perfectly well too, but his was, I'm going to get out of here. with whatever conditions, and I'm going to bend over and get bailed so I don't have to be in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And he got bail, but he's got to deal with all the conditions of that now and go through piss tests, and he's not allowed to smoke pot and all sorts of other stuff. So he got a plea bargain offer today, and he rejected it. And I want to say, shout out to him for standing up. But he also threatened a hunger strike when we were in there, which is probably why I got my phone call. And I'm just glad that it wasn't necessary for him to endure too much pain. But yeah, we stood our ground, and the government blinked because.
Now, how long did it take before you got your phone call? Because that's the one thing that really, really aggravated me. Not to say that it wasn't aggravating enough to watch, somebody that I've associated with and somebody that I've, done a little bit of work for get drug off on just absolutely nothing. And when people ask me, they're like, hey, what happened to Adam? What did he get arrested for? I'm like, he got arrested for standing next to somebody smoking pot. He got arrested for having a microphone in his hand. But the thing that really bothered me was that they wouldn't even give you a phone call. I'm sitting there, I'm blowing up Daryl's phone. He's calling everybody. And we're like, has anybody heard from Adam? And calling your parents, and they haven't heard from you. It was really a creepy time for us on the outside. But for you on the inside, what was it like just saying, hey, do I get my phone call? And they're like, yeah, just sit there and hold tight.
Well, I mean, at some point, you start to worry that maybe there's something really nefarious behind this. And I do want to kind of downplay the significance of what happened, and I got a good chance to talk with Luke Radowski about this, but what was it behind what happened? I mean, we know what physically happened, we know what legally happened, we know the logistics of what transpired, but we know there were other federal agencies involved from the testimony of Donald Reed, and we know that they were targeting me directly. For what reason exactly? I don't know. Was there a command from on high? Probably not. It was probably just all of these various factors conspiring, and a couple of cops got out of control, and I ended up being the victim here.
Sure.
I was set up, I was framed, but I don't believe. I mean, if this is the best they've got, I mean, I'm kind of insulted. Like, I must not be that important if these are the schmuck idiots they send after me, because I know they've got way more capable people on payroll that could handle something like this. And I don't think it was something, as huge and nefarious as that, but it was a very disturbing arrest in and of itself, because it was a pretty clear-cut case of political prosecution.
Sure. And then at the end of the day, you looked at it and were just like, okay, so if this is all you guys got, this isn't too much. But looking back at the event, and this, you guys are obviously going to hold the next event outside. Would you do anything differently would you have canceled the event? I mean, obviously, hindsight's 20/20, but is this something that you believe just kind of solidified for everybody that's in the liberty movement about just how out of control these guys in costumes can be sometimes, just to go in there? And another thing that really kind of got me upset was the fact that there didn't need to be any violence involved in any of these arrests. And you saw people getting thrown to the ground. They tried to throw you to the ground, and my friend and I laughed that the cop wasn't strong enough to throw you to the ground. So we thought that was funny. Like, look at the cop trying to manhandle Adam, and he can't even get his arms behind his back. This is so funny. But I mean, what do you make of all this? Do you think that going back in hindsight that this was a positive thing for the liberty movement, kind of exposing how government and people in costumes can really get out of control?
I hope so, but I haven't really seen a lot of that. I think a lot of people are still scared, and to certain degrees, or to a certain degree, rightly so. But people have to get over it when they realize that being frightened doesn't accomplish anything, and that staying frightened and being frozen in inaction is where the greatest danger is.
Oh, absolutely. So I know we got to wrap it up because I only had you for a half an hour. So I want you to plug everything that you can plug in the next couple of seconds, so we can all get on the same page. And I think that one of the things that's going to really come out of this July 4th thing is that you're going to see how individuals are going to come together, whether we all believe in the same thing or not. Whether you're a libertarian, whether you're an anarcho-capitalist, whether you're a conservative, it doesn't really matter. What you saw was absolute tyranny out in the open for people that were just trying to do something civil, in civil disobedience, which, I think that eventually, hey, maybe we should mail the definition of civil disobedience to the captain of the Washington D.C. police, and then she can see what that really is instead of making her statement saying that if you walk over here, even though the Supreme Court, which rules on the Constitution, said that it's okay, even if you do that, you can do civil disobedience as long as you don't break the law. It's like, all right. But let's get all your stuff here, and then we can wrap it up and get you on your way, because I know you got a ton of stuff on your plate, man.
Oh, yeah. No, I really appreciate it. But things are coming together here, and we're just so excited to see that there are people all over the country stepping up. I believe we have most states already covered with someone who's decided to take point. But we need more volunteers. We need to make sure that people are coordinating their efforts. So if people want to email Jeffrey, it's Jeffrey at adamversustheman.com. For information about all the great events we've got coming up, it's adamversustheman.com/calendar. And for people that want to support the show and what we got going on, to donate to the Legal Attack Fund, because we will be pursuing whatever civil suits are available to us to hopefully beat back against this particular practice of targeting activists. It's adamversustheman.com/invest. And if people want to get a hold of me directly, Adam at adamversustheman.com.
Awesome. And everybody, I think that another good idea would be for us to call your local papers, your local news coverage, your local media, and explain to them what's going to happen on July 4th if you're going to be out there. Because these media blackouts over things like Monsanto and what's going to happen on July 4th, that is just going to expose even further how corporations actually own our media. And once again, the news is not there to inform you. It is there to dictate to you what they want you to hear. And Adam fights with us all the time, and I appreciate him for coming on and sharing the message and sharing your story, man. And I'm just so glad to see you out and about and living to fight the other day. But one thing I had to ask you, what happened to the big goatee, man? I absolutely missed that. Because that was the first thing that got me turned on to you. I'm like, here's a guy in a wife beater, a shaved head, and a goatee, and he's just telling it like it is. This guy's money. What happened to the goatee? Was it a tactical image change for you?
I guess you could say that, but it was also starting to gather food particles on a pretty regular basis, and was a bit more trouble than it's worth. But I do plan on retiring someday and really seeing what I look like naturally. But until then, I will maintain a relatively neat and orderly appearance.
Well, I have the I'm going to call it the libertarian beard too, because I think that everybody that I run into that's a libertarian has this little 5-day to 10-day-old beard that they rock everywhere. So. Oh yeah, the best part of the libertarian freedom movement is that we have better facial hair than any political movement in America today. Actually, I think we have the only facial hair, because everybody else is, you got to look sharp and you got to look clean and you got to be clean cut and be able to be dictative. But anyway, all kidding aside, man, thank you for all the work that you do. Thanks for coming on the show. And hey, man, keep fighting for liberty out there. We're fighting here with you. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Yeah, take care, Adam. There he goes, everybody. Adam from the Adam versus the Man podcast. Sorry I didn't get any of your questions. The guy that typed the question in about what he thinks about Rand Paul, he actually did an entire dialogue on that. So you can go on his YouTube channel and look it up, because he did talk about how he does not believe that Rand Paul shares the same sentiments as his father. His father sees himself as a pure volunteerist, whereas Rand Paul believes that he can change things inside of the system. So thanks for joining me, everybody. Sorry for the not being able to take any calls, but we did have him on a time crunch, and I hope you guys enjoyed the interview. Remember, you can follow me on Facebook at We Are Not Cattle. You can go to the website wearenotcattle.net, and you can also follow me on Twitter at We Are Not Cattle, the number 1. And if you live in the Georgia area, you should be able to find me on July 4th right outside the Capitol with my sign, being ready in support of the Adam versus the Man protest on July 4th in front of your local state municipality. And as he said, for more details, you can either go to the Adam versus the Man /calendar, or you can email Jeffrey at JEFFREY at adamversustheman.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. Get a friend, get informed, and get involved, and let's change society. Take care. In your heart.